Kill my dog, walk home forever. I had this cabin in the woods high up on the mountainside. When I bought the property, we were able to buy all the land near the cabin except for one parcel. The previous owner of the entire set of properties had a spoiled son who liked to get drunk and gamble away everything he earned. So we got all but one parcel. He managed to scrape enough cash to get one parcel right below our cabin. His parcel was entirely surrounded by mine. There's a road going up and over the mountain that first passes by the cabin and continues on through his parcel, finally ending at a pond below that. When he decided to build on the parcel, I granted him an easement for power, water, and road access, which I had my lawyer write up because I was busy in the city. I was trying to be a good neighbor. I only went up on weekends, so I didn't have too many problems. We managed just fine for a few years. I didn't like him much, but we kept to ourselves, though he had a weird habit of sneering at me when he drove by in his girlfriend's car. The police came out a few times because he was fighting with his girlfriend, but he left me alone until one day during a particularly hot August. His girlfriend left him, but he wanted the tracks. He bought a new truck. He liked his new truck. He drove his new truck past my cabin all weekend long, back and forth, non-stop. I was trying to get the last part of a rather difficult book finished and didn't need a Mario Andretti wannabe tearing up my peace of mind, but it was a private road, so any traffic problems had to be settled with the help of law enforcement. I had a sweet Cocker Spaniel named Mindy who stayed inside most of the time and only went outside to do her business. She was terrified of the big Dodge as he went up and down the mountain throwing gravel and mud everywhere. When I went outside to tell him to stop, he flipped me off, called me a few choice words, and threatened to run me over if I didn't get out of his way. I just shook my head and went inside, resolving to settle his problem with the lawyer instead of fighting him. I didn't want to accidentally kill him. He wasn't a very big guy and all mouth anyways. I figured it was the liquor talking, so I walked Mindy and kept her inside that weekend. I had to wear headphones to tune out his act while living in a cabin in the woods. He was pissed because I bought his father's land, despite the fact that his father left him enough money to buy it several times over. He told my solicitor all of this when he wrote up the easement. My lawyer informed me of this when I contacted him about the dangerous Dodge dirtbag. He continued driving up and down the mountain like a maniac for the next 4 weekends. He did not stop even in the dead of night. He just went on and on and on. And I locked my doors hoping he wasn't so deranged that he would set my cabin on fire. Fortunately, the second weekend, my lawyer told me to get video and pictures if possible, but not to confront him lest he cook up a song and dance for his own lawyer. So I set up a camera and a game by the corner of my house about 5 yards from the road. I have groceries delivered once a month to the cabin by the local supermarket in town. The delivery person has instructions to leave the bags on the back porch. I didn't hear her knocking on the 5th weekend, and so she let herself in and put the bags on the kitchen counter. While she was leaving, Mindy slipped outside to do her business, but couldn't get back in. I didn't hear her barking, but I did hear her yelps when the drunk bastard ran her over. I ran outside, and he was standing over her, cursing Mindy. He'd run her over and was taking his twisted frustration out on her while she was dying. So I shoved him away and scooped her up. I then raced into town to see the vet. By the time I got to town, she was cold, and I knew it was too late. So I limped back home, broken-hearted and angry. I took Monday off and buried her beneath an old bay tree. On Tuesday, I took the footage and the game camera stills into the city and gave them to my lawyer. The pictures were on film, so it took a couple days to get them developed, but the VCR tape told the whole story. He'd seen her beside the cabin and had veered off the road to run her down. The evil grin on red face looked demonic. I asked my lawyer if I could sue him. He said I could, and we had plenty of evidence to cause him serious harm, but in the meantime, he'd still be living there and things would escalate. At the time, dogs were considered property and didn't have anything in the way of rights. Still don't, which is a pity. But I wanted a fight, and my lawyer knew that if he didn't throw me a bone, I'd go back up to that mountain and beat the dirtbag to death with his own wrenched off arm. My lawyer calmed me down and took out the lease agreement. In it was a standard maintenance clause, but there was also a stipulation in the easement that prohibited acts that might disturb the peace and harmony of the owner. It had a quit clause that automatically rescinded his easement should he persist in such acts for a month or more. My lawyer had sent him a letter to the effect the second week and didn't get a reply. The mail was registered and he had to sign for it in town at the post office. I had my lawyer serve him with a quit notice. In that state, a notice to quit an easement doesn't have the same level of difficulty as a notice to quit tenancy, which can drag out for 6 months or more. If you are in violation of an easement's rights and are ordered to quit it by the owner, you can appeal, but in the interim, you must by law stay off the easement, and any utilities passing through can be cut off at the owner's pleasure unless doing so can cause a life-threatening situation. But I didn't cut off his water and power right away. We didn't start proceedings on the suit until later. He continued to drive on the road after the order to quit, only faster and with more profanity. I got it all on tape. I told him so, and he said he didn't care. He said, ugly fucks like me should just die. So I decided to stay away until the suit was initiated. So, a month later, I had workers on the mountain put in a nice gate. Solid construction and 3 feet of concrete. I could open and close it with a garage door opener. I had barbed wire fence around the whole property, so the only way in or out was via the gate. I had a pedestrian gate put in beside the road and left that unlocked. It was about a quarter mile to the cabin, and half again that to his own place. A fairly long walk for a raging alcoholic. I got good pictures of him on the game camera that weekend. Dirtbag driving up to the gate in his big truck, Dirtbag trying to jimmy the lock, Dirtbag leaving and returning with a hacksaw to try to cut the lock, Dirtbag leaving in frustration, Dirtbag returning with his truck, Dirtbag leaving again, and Dirtbag ramming the gate uphill at full speed. Finally, Dirtbag through windshield, laying on hood, as smashed truck rolls back down the mountain. The gate didn't even bend. The truck sure did. He lived. Still not as ugly as me, but we can't get everything we want. 20 odd shots and more than enough proof to show the judge to get a protection order, and since it was a small town, the same judge wasn't too pleasant with him when he took his last penny during the lawsuit. He even got his parcel and his flea-infested shack. We let him keep his busted-up Dodge. This is why revenge is best served cold. OP got everything except his poor dog. The loser destroyed himself and the things he cared about. Had OP acted in passion, he'd have likely gotten jail time for assault, if not more. An escort stole my dogs, and the cops won't help, so I hunted her down myself. So it all started Sunday, May 26th. I was flying back home from Texas, where I was at my girlfriend's sister's wedding. We had a layover in Vegas before our 1-hour flight back to Sacramento. I land in Vegas, and I get reception. That's when my roommates call me and tell me how the door to our backyard gate was busted open, and my beautiful husky wolf mix was missing. That dog is everything to me. She is 3 years old now, and I've had her since she was 2 months old. She's been with me through all my breakups, my layoffs, and my evictions. She was my only friend when all my other friends believed the rumors my ex said about me. Anyways, she is gone, and I get home to start doing the usual. Putting up flyers, offering a reward, and notifying every shelter, vet, and her chip company of her disappearance. I put notices on every lost and found page, and suddenly it starts to go viral on Facebook. A lot of people really wanted to help me find my dog, and I had eyes everywhere. I wake up one day to a Craigslist ad with a picture of an unknown girl hugging my dog, with the ad titled Brown Husky, sent to me by a friend of mine, so I contact the ad maker. The lady was nice and explained how she didn't find my dog, but a friend of hers on Instagram found her. She watched her post pictures on Instagram and brag about how the universe brought me this beautiful dog. She sent me screenshots of her Instagram and all the pictures she posted of my dog. She then tells me I don't know her personally, but she is a fellow escort. It turns out the girl who has my dog is an escort. So she messaged the girl to tell her that she found the owner of the dog, and she full deletes all posts about my dog and blocks the ad maker. So I think, alright, this is already viral. Game on. I get all the people who've been searching, including my detective aunt, and we make a hunt. I file a police report, and they are down to bust the chick, but I have to find where she is and holding my dog for them to do anything, which is pretty useless. I get people to start contacting one another, and we found her legal name and all the addresses she is tied with, including her boyfriend, mom, stepdad, and possibly dad and stepmom's info. We even found 2 warrants for her arrest. She was charged with petty theft, hit and run involving property damage, lying to a peace officer, and possession of contraband. After I found info including her being an escort, which is illegal where I'm from, we had her. I dug up all her info including emails and phone numbers with her escort phone number. So I call this woman to confront her, and she starts yelling at me about how I'm harassing and threatening her. This is the first time I've ever talked to the woman, and how she was going to press charges on me. She then said she brought my dog to a shelter. She also told me which shelter 2 days prior. I confirmed this wasn't true. Meanwhile, I'm gathering all the proof I have that this dog is mine, which is 3 years of time-stamped photos with me and the dog, and the chip information that my dog is registered with, and her being in my name with the chip company. She is told this and still refuses to give her back by saying, I'm afraid to give the dog back because the owner is threatening me, which I never did, and have proof of that, so now she is on blast on all social media. So sorry this happened to you. I hope the dog is returned to you safely. In my opinion, it sounds like she's getting desperate and will probably give up soon, as the community has come together to help you. It's a shame that people can go as low as to steal someone else's pet, but I hope they are found safe and sound soon. I'm also disappointed with the lack of support you got from the police in your area. They should take things like this a bit more seriously. Neighbors sued me after harassing my dog for months. Lost horribly. About 6 or 7 months ago, my neighbor got a drone. I don't mind people having hobbies, but for some reason, he insisted on flying like the biggest jerk possible. He would hover in front of other houses and windows, try to race cars going down the road, and worst of all, he had a habit of flying his drone in my fenced backyard, buzzing over my dog, diving low just over my dog's head before circling around to do it again. My dog isn't small, he's about 70 pounds and a Malamute, but the drone terrified him, and I was worried what would happen if it hit him. I asked my neighbor several times to please not fly in my yard and explained that it was scaring my dog. He basically told me to get lost and laughed in my face. When it still continued, I called the police. Unfortunately, there wasn't much they could do other than to ask him to please not fly over my house/property. Finally, in late December, it happened. My dog got tired of his shit and managed to catch the drone right as it was diving towards him. He shredded the drone. The thing was just a jumbled mess of wires and plastic. Neighbor was pissed. He stormed over to my house, swearing and threatening me, which I ignored. A week later, I got a summons to small claims court. He wanted $900 for the cost of his drone and an additional $300 for supposedly denying him access to his property. The drone sat in my yard for a couple hours before it was retrieved. Screw that. He could have killed my dog. I don't have kids or a girlfriend. I just have my dog, who is my best friend for the past 7 years. That dog has moved with me 3 times, was there when I graduated college, saw me buy my first house and my first new car. I love my dog. I went to legal advice and got some great help from them. Turns out, him suing me was the best thing to ever happen. When we got to small claims court, the judge basically laughed away his claims that I had intentionally trained my dog to attack his drone. But little did he know, I was prepared. I had dozens of photos of my yard showing it was impossible for him to accidentally fly that low to my dog, videos of him harassing my dog in the past, and I had saved all my medical bills from taking my dog to the vet. $700 for an x-ray? Check. Another $250 to sedate him during? Why not? Don't want him being uncomfortable. Full dental exam with tooth cleaning and repair? $400. Then there was a cost of anti-anxiety medication and a secondary checkup, wet food for a week in case his teeth were hurt, and extra just for good measure. In the end, the jerk ended up owing me almost $2,000 and is now being investigated by the FAA for not having a registered drone and violating several FAA regulations concerning drone flight too near an airport, too close to other people, out of sight of operator, and way above the maximum altitude. Enjoy never being allowed to fly drones again, dong. I've flown drones for years and never once had an issue. As a hobbyist, it's pretty easy to avoid the no-fly zones, but it seems like these guys really wanted to bust you despite you asking nicely several times. It's common sense not to fly a drone over any dog, yet alone one as big as yours. It was only a matter of time until your dog had enough and chewed it up. You made the right move by seeking legal advice after you got sued to make sure you made no mistake, and in the end, everything worked out just as it should have. My revenge story almost killed a man. About 3 years ago, I was working in a pretty big factory. They hired through 5 different temp services, so the place was pretty much like a revolving door. People came and left without warning. Sometimes it was hard just to find a familiar face. So when someone started stealing my lunches, everyone became a suspect. After falling victim to the lunchbox bandit for a week straight, I'm talking about 6 12-hour days with no lunch, needless to say the frustration spawned several evil plans, but I felt the Carolina Reaper would give me the fastest and most effective results. All I know is people were gonna think twice before stealing lunches. I spent all night making the best steak fajitas for lunch the next day. I finally minced the Reaper peppers into a nice pico de gallo and topped my devil fajitas off. I carefully placed my fajitas into a Tupperware bowl, garnished them with cilantro and limes, then covered with a clear lid to display their beauty. The next morning, about an hour after I placed them in the fridge, a woman started screaming for help. I ran to the lunchroom to find the lunchbox bandit laying on the floor gasping for air. The Reaper peppers triggered an asthma attack and he had to be rushed to the hospital. He never said anything, and neither did I, until now. I never heard of someone using Carolina Reaper peppers to exact revenge, but it's definitely the most creative way I've ever heard of. It really makes me wonder what would have happened if you didn't add the cilantro and limes. I mean, that's what really made this story stand out for me. If it wasn't for the garnish, no one would have known that there was a reason behind your actions. I just can't believe that they had to rush him to the hospital. This is some serious stuff right here. I'm glad that everything worked out though, and I hope you two were able to put this behind you after he recovered. Neighbor is a jerk, so I caused a potentially catastrophic rift in his marriage. I live in a predominantly Mormon area, and I am not Mormon. I received quite a bit of criticism from my across-the-street neighbor because of the religious difference. I'm assuming. We've never interacted before he started messing with me. He currently has 10 children. About a month ago, on trash day, he told one of his kids to kick my trash can over into the street. The kid did it, and I witnessed everything. This is not the first time he has kicked my trash over, and I figured it was a lost cause to go over there and ask them for some decency more than I already have. The next day, I was reminded by a friend about how I used to have a pen pal when I was younger before I moved. Later that night, I was browsing the web looking for a pen pal when I stumbled across a cool sounding site, prisonpenpals.com. I visited the site, and after clicking through a few dodgy links, was brought to an array of different prisoners who were looking for a pen pal. After doing a bit of browsing from there, I stumbled across a fellow who was on death row for first-degree murder. Feeling bad for this guy, but not wanting to give my address out, you send an email, the guards print it out and give it to the prisoner, who then writes you a letter and delivers it to your physical address. I remembered the jerk across the street. More out of curiosity than malice, I proceeded to write a very detailed letter about how I am a trapped, secretly gay Mormon man with 10 kids who was looking to start an extramarital affair with the prisoner. I put in his address and send. I had my hilarious petty satisfaction. I expected nothing to come out of this. I thought he would be going through his mail, see the letter, not open it, toss it, and think nothing of it after that. But boy, was I wrong. Of course, with it being a small town, this guy does run a small business here where one of my acquaintances work. I went in just earlier today and chatted with my acquaintance before he told me, "Oh my god, did you hear about your neighbor?" I said no because I hadn't, and he filled me in on all of the details. Apparently one of the neighbor's kids had brought in the mail only for his wife to find it and read the letter from this prisoner responding to the joke letter that I wrote. I don't know the specifics of the letter, but I do know that his wife threw a fit when he arrived and made him pack his bags. My acquaintance informed me that this was not the first time neighbor had started or tried to start an affair with another man, and apparently this was the last straw for her. I am still shocked, horrified, and extremely amused by this predicament. I have to say that's a pretty messed up thing to do, but also pretty funny at the same time. Yes, your neighbor had something coming to him with the way he and his family treated you, but maybe you crossed the line here. You have the option to come clean to your neighbors and tell them it was a prank. However, this could lead to them suing you for emotional distress. Hearing that this isn't the first time your neighbor has cheated on his wife makes me feel no sympathy towards their marriage falling apart over your prank, as it is probably for the best. A client refused to pay, so I had some fun. When I have the time and come across interesting projects or clients, I take on one-off assignments to create websites, graphics, applications, etc. for said clients. I recently had a client for whom I created a website. Their old website looked like it was created in the early 90s, but it drew a lot of traffic, so the need to update was clear. Like always, we first agreed on the scope and design, and my client showcased his competitors' websites for me, explaining what kind of things he absolutely wanted for his site, but better, as he put it. I then had him sign a standard contract and pay a small upfront fee. Everything went smoothly, and I got to work. After the project finished, I sent an invoice to my client. He told me that he won't be paying anymore. During the few days that I had worked, he had watched some YouTube videos about creating websites, and he had come to the conclusion that he, without any prior experience in web design or programming, could create an equally impressive site in pretty much the same time as I had, and so he didn't feel like he should pay me anything extra. I reminded him of our contract, and he flat out said that I am free to take him to court, but he won't be paying me. Obviously, I had no intention of taking him to court because it would result in more headache than it'd be worth, but I wasn't just going to let this slide. The website was already live and teeming with visitors, but my client, although they were a newfound web design professional, hadn't realized that I was still the only one who had access to the site's backend, which meant that I could make any changes to the site and he couldn't do anything about it. So I remembered how he had told me all about his competitors' websites. I figured the appropriate response would be to write a script that replaces his company contact details and opening hours with those of his competitors. Every time the site would load, the script would randomly show one of the competitors' contact details instead. I also made it so that the contact form requests would be sent to a randomly selected competitor's email. I chose not to inform my client of this and went on to enjoy my vacation. Within a week, I received several emails and a call about my client's concerns that something was wrong, that he hadn't received a new client through the site in almost a week, even though the site's visitor count is much higher than before, thanks to the new design and improved SEO that he hadn't yet paid for. I let him know what I had done, and I told him I would undo it, but it would take me about an hour, for which I would be charging. Since I was on vacation, I'd apply the rush fee stated on the contract for that hour. And of course, I told him that this would all be added on top of the original fee that he owed me, plus interest for late payment. Naturally, this led to insults and threats being thrown in my direction, to which I calmly responded that I will begin work once I have the money in my account, and if he doesn't want to lose any more customers to his competitors, he'd best man up quick. He tried to call me immediately, and I just declined the call. After the second attempt to call me again, I sent him directly to voicemail. I received an express payment to my account the very next morning. I'm glad you were able to handle the situation so calmly and professionally. I agree with you that this guy is a complete idiot for having let his anger get the best of him like that. I mean, what kind of person yells at someone over the phone? I know that sometimes it's hard to remain calm when someone is being extremely rude or threatening towards you, but it's just not worth it. You definitely handled yourself well in this situation and showed that you're a professional who can be trusted to do their job correctly. I'm sure there are plenty of other people out there who would love to work with someone like you. Keep up the good work. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Check out the other videos on your screen right now. Otherwise, you're definitely the jerk.